The engine sputtered to life with a groan that echoed too loudly in the dead quiet of the gas station lot. My hands were shaking so badly on the steering wheel, I could barely get the car into reverse. I glanced at the rearview mirror, a cold dread seizing my chest, and there he was, standing exactly where I'd left him beside pump 5, his head tilted slightly, watching me. No, not just watching, following me with those eyes. The pale fluorescent lights of the canopy hummed above him, casting his gaunt figure in a sickly yellow glow, making the shadows around him seem impossibly deep. I mashed the accelerator, tires spitting gravel, but even as I rounded the corner onto the highway, I couldn't shake the image of him still standing there, a silent sentinel against the backdrop of the empty night, his gaze a physical weight burning into the back of my skull. It felt like I was driving away from a predator, and I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that he wasn't done with me. It all started last summer, when I took the night shift at the old Petro-Canada on Highway 93. My gas station was on the old Highway 93, about 20 miles outside of Cedar Creek, nestled between a forgotten diner and a perpetually closed antique shop. It was remote, quiet, and exactly what I thought I needed after a rough patch. The pay was decent, and the solitude appealed to me. I figured I could catch up on some reading during the slower hours. Most nights slow meant non-existent. I'd spend hours stocking shelves, brewing coffee that would likely go cold, and filling out the endless night shift reports for inventory and sales. The quiet was usually a comfort, a gentle hum against the drone of the refrigerator units and the occasional hiss of a passing semi-truck on the highway. I even started to look forward to the strange, almost meditative rhythm of those long, dark hours. The first few weeks were uneventful, a parade of truckers, tired families on cross-country trips, and the odd local grabbing a late-night snack. Every face was new, fleeting, gone as quickly as they appeared. My bosses, a husband and wife team named Frank and Alina, were easygoing. They mostly just cared that the till balanced and the place didn't burn down. "You'll be fine, kid," Frank had chuckled during my training. "Just keep an eye on things and don't let the silence." The engine sputtered to life with a groan that echoed too loudly in the dead quiet of the gas station lot. My hands were shaking so badly on the steering wheel, I could barely get the car into reverse. I glanced at the rearview mirror, a cold dread seizing my chest, and there he was, standing exactly where I'd left him beside pump 5, his head tilted slightly, watching me. No, not just watching, following me with those eyes. The pale fluorescent lights of the canopy hummed above him, casting his gaunt figure in a sickly yellow glow, making the shadows around him seem impossibly deep. I mashed the accelerator, tires spitting gravel, but even as I rounded the corner onto the highway, I couldn't shake the image of him still standing there, a silent sentinel against the backdrop of the empty night, his gaze a physical weight burning into the back of my skull. It felt like I was driving away from a predator, and I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that he wasn't done with me. It all started last summer, when I took the night shift at the old Petro-Canada on Highway 93. My gas station was on the old Highway 93, about 20 miles outside of Cedar Creek, nestled between a forgotten diner and a perpetually closed antique shop. It was remote, quiet, and exactly what I thought I needed after a rough patch. The pay was decent, and the solitude appealed to me. I figured I could catch up on some reading during the slower hours. Most nights slow meant non-existent. I'd spend hours stocking shelves, brewing coffee that would likely go cold, and filling out the endless night shift reports for inventory and sales. The quiet was usually a comfort, a gentle hum against the drone of the refrigerator units and the occasional hiss of a passing semi-truck on the highway. I even started to look forward to the strange, almost meditative rhythm of those long, dark hours. The first few weeks were uneventful, a parade of truckers, tired families on cross-country trips, and the odd local grabbing a late-night snack. Every face was new, fleeting, gone as quickly as they appeared. My bosses, a husband and wife team named Frank and Alina, were easygoing. They mostly just cared that the till balanced and the place didn't burn down. "You'll be fine, kid," Frank had chuckled during my training. "Just keep an eye on things and don't let the silence drive you crazy." I remember smiling then, thinking how little he knew about true craziness. I felt perfectly content with the silence initially. That was before he started showing up. He first appeared about a month into my tenure. It was a Tuesday, around 2 a.m. The air was thick and still, heavy with humidity, promising a thunderstorm that never quite arrived. I was wiping down the coffee machine, humming a forgotten tune, when the automatic doors hissed open. I looked up, expecting a weary trucker, but instead, a man stood there, framed by the harsh glare of the parking lot lights. He was tall, gaunt, with an unnervingly still quality about him. His clothes were plain, dark, nondescript, a faded denim jacket, dark jeans, and old work boots. Nothing about him screamed threat, but something in his presence was immediately off-kilter. He didn't move past the threshold of the doors, didn't head for the snacks or the register or even the restroom. He just stood there, observing. My initial thought was that he was lost or maybe just taking a break from driving. I offered a polite, "Can I help you, sir?" He didn't respond. His eyes, dark and sunken, simply rested on me. It wasn't accusatory or aggressive, just an intense, unwavering focus that made the hairs on my arms stand up. After a long, awkward moment, he slowly turned his head to scan the mostly empty aisles. Then, just as silently as he'd appeared, he walked over to the cooler section, grabbed a single bottle of water, and came to the counter. He placed the water on the counter. No eye contact, no greeting. I scanned it, told him the price. He paid in exact change, pulling a handful of crumpled bills from his pocket. His fingers were long and surprisingly clean for someone who looked like they'd been on the road for days. As I handed him his change and the receipt, his eyes finally met mine again. There was no flicker of recognition, no warmth, just that same unsettling, deep stare. It felt like he was looking through me, not at me. He didn't say thank you. He just took the water, turned, and walked out, the automatic doors hissing shut behind him. I watched through the window as he got into an older model, dark sedan, a sensible, almost invisible car, and drove away without even glancing back. Strange, I thought, but nothing more than a weird late-night encounter. I dismissed it, filed it away as another peculiar anecdote for my night shift reports, and continued my duties. But then he came back. The very next night, same time, same routine. He bought a single bottle of water, same silent transaction, same unsettling stare. And the night after that, and the night after that, it became a ritual. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, between 1:45 a.m. and 2:15 a.m., he would appear. He was always the gas station's only customer during that specific window of time. He never bought anything else, never spoke, never used the restroom, never filled his tank. Just that one bottle of water. His car would pull up, he'd walk in, grab the water, pay, and leave. There was a predictability to it that was both comforting and increasingly unnerving. It was like he was a ghost, programmed to repeat the same action every night. I started to dread those hours. The silence, which had once been a comfort, began to feel like a suffocating shroud. I'd find myself glancing at the clock, my stomach twisting into knots as 1:45 a.m. approached. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he worked nearby, maybe it was just his routine. But no one else had such a rigid, limited routine. Every other customer had varying needs, different items, a different time of arrival. He was an anomaly. His presence felt too deliberate, too focused. The way he would stand by the door for a moment, just looking at me, before proceeding to the cooler. It was like he was staking his claim, asserting his presence. One night I decided to test him. Instead of waiting at the counter, I pretended to be engrossed in stacking candy bars on a lower shelf when he entered. I wanted to see if he would just proceed, or if he would wait for me to acknowledge him. The moment the doors hissed open, I felt his presence. The air in the store seemed to thicken, the low hum of the refrigerators suddenly louder. I kept my back to him, counting out chocolate bars, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I could feel his eyes on me, an almost physical weight. I waited, holding my breath for what felt like an eternity. Finally, unable to bear the tension, I slowly straightened up and turned around. He was standing exactly where he always did by the entrance, staring directly at me, the single water bottle already clutched in his hand. My stomach dropped. He hadn't moved to the cooler. He had simply walked in, bypassed the cooler, and was holding the water. It was as if he knew what I was going to do or what he was going to buy before he even entered. That night after he left, I felt a tremor of genuine fear. It wasn't just a weird routine anymore. It was something more, something purposeful. I started checking the doors more often, double-checking the locks before I left, even though I knew the system was pretty secure. I told myself it was just paranoia, a side effect of working alone in the dark. But the image of his eyes, those deep, unblinking eyes, kept surfacing in my mind. They weren't just seeing me, they felt like they were studying me. And that was when the comfortable silence of the night shift reports became a heavy, suffocating blanket filled with the unspoken questions about the gas station's only customer. The unsettling routine continued, each night compounding the strange weight of his presence. I started to notice other things, small details that individually meant nothing, but together painted a disturbing picture. For instance, he never seemed to age or even to change his clothes much. It was always the same nondescript dark jacket, the same faded jeans. His face remained gaunt, almost etched with a permanent expression of blank observation. I also noticed that he never pulled up to the pumps. His car, that dark, unremarkable sedan, would always park in the furthest corner of the lot, almost as if he wanted to be out of the main view of the highway. He'd walk across the vast, empty expanse of asphalt, a lone figure under the buzzing lamps, and enter the store. I'd watch him through the security camera feed, a tiny, grainy figure moving with a distinct, almost unnatural stillness. I did try to talk to Frank, my boss, about him. "There's this one guy," I started, trying to sound casual, "who comes in every night same time, just for water. Doesn't say much." Frank just grunted, not looking up from his inventory sheet. "Yeah, we get all sorts out here, kid, weirdos and wanderers. As long as they pay, they're good customers." He shrugged, dismissing my concern with a wave of his hand. I didn't press it. How could I explain the way his eyes made me feel, the way the air shifted when he entered, the peculiar sense of being hunted without ever being explicitly threatened? It sounded like paranoia, even to my own ears. So I kept my growing unease to myself, meticulously filing my night shift reports, each one feeling like a testament to my increasingly fractured sanity. One particularly foggy night, the kind where the world outside the gas station windows dissolved into a thick, swirling gray, he arrived later than usual. It was closer to 2:30 a.m. My nerves were already frayed from the ceaseless blankness beyond the glass. When the doors hissed open and he materialized from the mist, he felt less like a man and more like an apparition. He didn't come directly to the counter. Instead, he walked slowly down the snack aisle, then the candy aisle, his gaze sweeping over the shelves, not lingering on any particular item. It was a perfunctory scan, almost as if he was familiarizing himself with the layout, or perhaps searching for something specific that wasn't there. He finally reached the cooler, pulled out his customary water bottle, and approached the counter. As he placed the bottle down, my hand, reaching for the scanner, brushed against his. His skin was surprisingly cold, almost clammy, despite the warm humidity inside the store. I quickly pulled my hand back, a shiver running down my spine. His eyes, fixed on mine, seemed to hold a fleeting spark of something I couldn't quite identify: curiosity, amusement. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the usual blankness. "That comes to $1.75, I managed, my voice a little shakier than I would have liked. He paid, as always, in exact change. As I handed him the receipt, he did something new. He actually spoke. His voice was a low, gravelly whisper, barely audible above the hum of the refrigerators. "You're always here," he said. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, delivered with an unsettling certainty. My mind raced, searching for a casual reply, but nothing came. My throat felt suddenly dry. "Yeah," I finally croaked out, "it's my shift." He just stared, that unblinking gaze drilling into me. Then he turned and walked out into the fog, disappearing almost immediately once he stepped outside. I stood there, rooted to the spot, listening to the fading hum of his car. "You're always here." The implication felt like a brand, searing itself into my consciousness. It wasn't just about the water anymore. He was aware of me. He was confirming that he had noticed my consistent presence, just as I had noticed his. The casual veneer of a regular customer had completely shattered. From that night on, the dynamic shifted. His visits became less routine and more like a nightly inspection. He'd still come, usually for the water, but his actions grew more erratic. Sometimes he'd spend an unnervingly long time just standing by the door, watching me as I went about my duties. Other times he'd walk the perimeter of the store, his head slowly turning, as if memorizing every detail, every angle. I even caught him once, through the reflections in the darkly polished floor, staring at my reflection in the glass of the cooler. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. It felt less like I was working a night shift and more like I was performing for a silent, unblinking audience of one. My sleep became fractured, haunted by dreams of his silent figure, always just beyond my reach, always watching. I started carrying my old beat-up flip phone with me everywhere in the store, just in case something happened. I knew it was probably irrational, but a gut feeling, a primal sense of alarm, was screaming at me. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just a quirky customer. This was something else. I started to time his departures, mentally calculating how long it would take him to drive away, how much time I had before I was truly alone again. One late Friday night, I was outside, emptying the trash bins into the big dumpster behind the store. It was a task I usually dreaded because it meant stepping out into the utter darkness beyond the reach of the store's lights. I had my back to the highway, wrestling with a particularly stubborn trash bag when my senses screamed. It wasn't a sound, not a distinct smell, but a sudden, intense feeling of being watched. I froze, every nerve ending tingling. The air grew heavy, the silence deepening to an unnatural degree. I slowly turned, my heart hammering against my ribs, expecting to see nothing but the empty lot. But there he was. Not in his car, not walking towards the store, but standing by the furthest edge of the parking lot, just beyond the reach of the lamplight, partially obscured by the shadows of a large oak tree. He was facing me, completely still, a dark silhouette against the fainter glow of the distant highway. He wasn't holding water. He wasn't moving to enter the store. He was just standing there in the pitch black, watching me. My breath hitched in my throat. I stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, the trash bag still clutched in my hand, our gazes locked across the desolate expanse of the parking lot. The only sound was the frantic pounding of my own blood in my ears. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a routine stop for water. This was deliberate. This was stalking. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. He took a single, slow step forward, then another. That was enough. I dropped the bag, scrambled back into the store, fumbling with the lock, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the deadbolt. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath, my eyes glued to the windows. He didn't follow. He just stood there, watching. My rational mind was screaming that I was overreacting, that it was just a man enjoying the cool night air, but my instincts were in full-blown panic. The gas station had become a cage, and I was the prey. The unsettling presence of the only customer grew into a palpable threat. After that night, the gas station felt less like a job and more like a carefully maintained trap. Every shadow seemed to hold his shape. Every distant car engine sounded like his sedan pulling into the far corner of the lot. My heart would leap into my throat at the slightest unexpected noise. The security cameras, once a reassuring presence, now merely provided grainy proof of his increasingly bold maneuvers. I watched him on the monitors, a silent, dark figure making his nightly pilgrimage. He was still buying the water, but now he'd often circle the counter, casually leaning against the display of impulse buys, his gaze never leaving me. It was a suffocating, constant pressure, a psychological weight that made every breath feel labored. I started taking extra precautions. My old flip phone was replaced with my smartphone, fully charged and tucked into my pocket. I kept the back room door locked, even when I was just a few feet away. I even started carrying a small, heavy wrench from the back room, just in case. It was a ridiculous defense against an unidentifiable threat, but it made me feel marginally less helpless. The logical part of me tried to reassure myself. He hadn't touched me, hadn't explicitly threatened me. He was just there. But the primal fear was a constant, low thrum beneath my skin. It was the fear of the unknown, the fear of that unwavering, silent observation. One particularly stormy night, the wind howled around the building, rattling the plate glass windows, and the rain hammered down in sheets, creating a desolate, isolated atmosphere. The power flickered several times, plunging the store into momentary darkness before the emergency lights kicked in. Customers were sparse. Only a few hardy truckers braved the weather. I was already on edge, the storm amplifying my anxieties. Around 2 a.m., right on schedule, his dark sedan pulled into the lot. He parked even further away than usual, almost at the very edge of the property line, partially obscured by the dense thicket of trees that bordered the highway. My stomach clenched. Even in this weather he was here. He entered the store, completely drenched, his dark clothes plastered to his frame. Water dripped from his hair onto the linoleum floor. He didn't head for the cooler. Instead, he walked directly to the window overlooking the pumps, his back to me. He stood there for a long moment, simply staring out into the rain-lashed darkness. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. This was different. This wasn't the water routine. My hand instinctively went to the wrench I'd stashed under the counter. The air was thick with tension, the only sounds the relentless drumming of rain and the whistle of the wind. He slowly turned, his eyes finding mine across the dimly lit store. There was no blankness in them tonight. There was a raw, intense focus, an unspoken message that made my blood run cold. He took a step towards me, then another, his wet boots squeaking on the floor. I gripped the wrench tighter, my knuckles white. He stopped about 10 feet from the counter. "It's a bad night out there," he said, his voice still low but clearer now, resonating with an unnerving calm. "Too dangerous to be alone." My mind raced. Was this a warning, a threat, or some twisted, perverse attempt at conversation? "I'm fine," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady, projecting an air of confidence I didn't feel. He tilted his head slightly, that characteristic unsettling gesture. "Are you?" he murmured, his gaze sweeping over me, lingering on my face for a beat too long. "You look tired. You look watched." My heart hammered. He knew. He absolutely knew. The gas station's only customer was playing a terrifying game. He took another step, closer now, and I could smell the damp earth and something else, something vaguely metallic on his clothes. I raised the wrench slightly, my intentions clear. "Stay back," I warned, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. He paused, a strange, almost amused glint in his eyes. "I just want to make sure you get home safe," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "After your shift." That was it. That was the line. He knew my routine. He knew I always left alone. He knew when my shift ended. It wasn't just about watching me at the station. He was watching me leave. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All those nights, all those times I'd driven away, thinking I was safe, he had been there. He had been watching me from the dark. The memory of the engine sputtering, of seeing him in my rearview mirror, flashed through my mind, suddenly filled with a chilling new context. Every single time. A primal surge of adrenaline coursed through me. I didn't care about the gas station or the money. I needed to get out. Get out. I yelled, my voice cracking, gesturing wildly with the wrench. "Get out of my store." Now, he just stood there, still and silent, his unsettling gaze never wavering. He seemed almost pleased by my reaction, a subtle lift at the corner of his lips. The storm outside intensified, a sudden flash of lightning momentarily illuminating the store, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. In that brief, stark light, I saw the true depth of the obsession in his eyes. I didn't wait. I didn't care if he bought his water. I didn't care about anything but escape. I lunged for the emergency panic button under the counter, slamming my palm down on it. A piercing, high-pitched alarm immediately blared through the quiet night, cutting through the sounds of the storm. He flinched, the first genuine reaction I'd ever seen from him. For a split second, a flicker of something, perhaps annoyance or surprise, crossed his face. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out, his silent departure almost too quick to register. I watched him through the security camera feed as he opened his car door, got in, and started the engine. He didn't speed off. He drove slowly out of the lot, his taillights disappearing into the impenetrable fog and rain. The alarm continued to shriek, a raw, desperate sound. I called Frank, trying to explain through gasps and sobs, my voice barely audible over the blare of the alarm. He arrived about 20 minutes later, looking bewildered and concerned. The police came too, but there was nothing for them to find. No break-in, no merchandise stolen, just a terrified employee and a blaring alarm. I filed my final night shift report, detailing what little I could, acutely aware of how insane it must sound. They watched the security footage, but he was just a figure, a man buying water, a man standing. There was no explicit threat, no crime committed. I never worked another night shift again. Frank was understanding, putting me on day shifts at another, busier location closer to town. But the feeling never left me. Every time I get into my car, I check the rearview mirror. Every time I leave a place, I scan my surroundings, my eyes darting to the darkest corners. I still see him sometimes in my dreams, standing in that gas station lot, under the sickly yellow lights, his head tilted, watching me. He was just the gas station's only customer, but he became my personal terror. The memory of his eyes seeing me, knowing me, waiting for me to leave, is burned into my mind. I often wonder if I had stayed, if I hadn't pressed that button, what would have happened. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I still wonder who he was, and if he ever found another gas station, another night shift worker to watch. The quiet never felt the same again. It used to be a comfort, a space for thought, but now it's a canvas for fear, a stage where the shadows play tricks on my eyes. I'm always listening, always scanning, always trying to discern the difference between a natural creak and something more deliberate. Sleep offers little reprieve. The images of his gaunt face, those unblinking eyes, they drift into my dreams, not as an active threat, but as a perpetual, silent presence. He's always there, just at the edge of my vision, always watching, never acting, leaving me to question if the horror was in his actions or merely in my own terrified perception. The gas station is a distant place now, a memory, but the feeling of being observed, of being known by someone I never knew, that lingers. It's a cold touch on the back of my neck when I'm alone, a vague unease that settles over me in the dark. I wonder if he's still out there, somewhere, finding new night shift workers, new silent routines. Sometimes I catch myself looking for his dark sedan in passing traffic, a morbid curiosity battling with a profound dread. This experience carved something out of me, something irreplaceable. It left me with a permanent sense of vulnerability, a chilling understanding that true fear often isn't loud or violent, but silent, patient, and utterly pervasive. Share your own thoughts or similar experiences in the comments below. Stay safe out there. You never know who's watching.